Sure, here's a reimagined version of the story titled Their Plea Was Heard, and the Galaxy's Most Feared Species Answered. An HFY-style science fiction story, celebrating the might and heart of humanity. 1. The Plea. The planet Ralzor was burning. A once proud world, home to a peaceful and ancient civilization, lay in ruins. Smoke blotted out the twin suns as the Krek hordes swept through cities with flame and claw. No one could stop them, not the Valari, not the armored Breaktal, not even the Varn Dominion with their quantum fleet. The Galactic Council listened to Ralzor's plea for help. They debated, they wept, they sent aid convoys, none of which made it past the Krek blockade. And so, as a final act of desperation, the Ralzor did the unthinkable. They sent their distress signal to Terra. To humans. 2. The silence before the storm. Humanity was a myth to most of the galaxy, a cautionary tale, a ghost. They had withdrawn from interstellar affairs after the Crimson Accord Wars, after their near-genocidal campaign against the Zarnai. Billions dead, entire ecosystems glassed. The last time humans went to war, entire species went extinct. No one had heard from them in over 200 years. But when the Ralzor's desperate signal reached the edges of Terran space, something shifted. Old machines whirred to life, ancient AI awakened, forgotten beacons lit the stars like torches in the night. And then came the message. Request acknowledged. Terra responds. 3. Humanity arrives. The Krek had never known fear. They had conquered half a quadrant in less than 2 standard years. Their biotech ships were nearly invulnerable. Their warriors felt no pain. Their swarm tactics overwhelmed every military doctrine in the galaxy. But then the humans arrived. They came not in thousands, but in dozens, a single fleet, black as void, silent as death. Their ships were ancient, patchworked with tech centuries ahead of anything the Council had seen. Where the Krek swarmed, humanity cut, with precision, with speed, with fury. No mercy, no negotiations, no retreat. The Terran dreadnought Relentless Dawn led the charge. It didn't orbit Ralzor, it hovered in atmosphere, blocking out the sky. From its belly poured machines shaped like nightmares and soldiers who hadn't aged in centuries. One Ralzor child, hiding in rubble, looked up as a human passed by. The soldier knelt, removed his helmet, and smiled. You called for help, he said. We're here. 4. The war that wasn't. The Krek fought as they always had, with overwhelming numbers. It didn't matter. Terran AI hacked their hives. Terran weapons shattered their ships in a single blast. Where the Krek advanced, humans dropped orbital strikes that turned entire valleys into molten glass. Within 6 days, the Krek were routed. Within 2 weeks, they were extinct. The Council watched in stunned silence. No diplomacy, no posturing, no prisoners, just results. 5. Aftermath. Humanity left as suddenly as it came. No demands, no colonies, no tribute. They simply said, next time, call us sooner. Ralzor rebuilt, stronger than ever, guarded by automated defense platforms gifted by Terra. Every galactic race rewrote their history books. Children were taught not just of Krek cruelty, but of the day the humans came back. 6. Legacy. Now, when the Council meets and debate is slow. When threats loom large and worlds quake in fear. A single phrase silences the room. Should we call the humans? Because now, the galaxy remembers. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered. Let me know if you want a version with more detail, a character focus, or in screenplay format. Absolutely, here's the next part of the story, continuing the HFY narrative. Part 2, Whispers in the Void. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. Echoes of War. The Krek homeworld was silent. Not from occupation, but from extinction. The Terrans had not just defeated them, they had erased them. Entire genetic lines scrubbed from existence. The galaxy tried to tell itself that it had been necessary, that the Krek left no choice. But deep down, every species knew the truth. Humanity had come back, and they had not forgotten. Rumors spread faster than FTL comms. Uncharted stars blinked with signs of Terran satellites. Ships reported sightings of black-armored Terran vessels watching from the edge of known space. The phrase Terran Recon Ghost became synonymous with absolute, Invisible power. And the galaxy started to change. 2. The Council fractures. The Galactic Council no longer felt like the apex. Some races lobbied for a formal alliance with Terra, others feared it. A few even whispered about a preemptive coalition, to strike the humans before they grew stronger again. That idea died the moment the humans heard about it. On the day of the grand vote, every member of the council received a message. Not through official channels, not even through known ones. The message was the same, repeated in every language. We are not conquerors. We are not your enemy. But make no mistake, should you seek war, you will find extinction. After that, no one ever mentioned aggression again. 3. The Uplift Program. A year passed. Then, unexpectedly, humanity extended a hand, not of war, but of guidance. They launched the Uplift Program, an open initiative offering Terran technology, defense systems, and terraforming assistance. In return, they asked only for cooperation, for peace, and for the right to observe. But it wasn't charity, it was strategy. Terran outposts began appearing across fringe worlds, quiet, efficient, heavily defended. Unmanned drones watched pirate activity. Terran medbays ended plagues in weeks. AI tutors elevated backward civilizations in months. The message was clear. We're back, and this time, we're building. 4. The Black Archive. But not everything humanity did was public. Beneath the polar cap of a dead moon, hidden even from the Council's deepest sensors, the Terrans built something they simply called the Archive. It contained everything. Their history. Their secrets. And their failures. Inside, a single AI Enix monitored the galaxy's threats, patterns, and potential extinction events. She didn't just analyze the present, she predicted futures, billions of them, and in nearly every simulation, one truth echoed. Peace is temporary. Threats are inevitable. Be ready. 5. A new plea. Then one day, another signal was heard. Not from the known galaxy. From beyond it. Coordinates in dark space. A voice, ragged and ancient, speaking a dialect no one had heard in millennia. To the humans who remember. We made a mistake. It is coming. We could not stop it. Only you might. Nyx processed the signal, analyzed the voice print, matched it. It was Terran. A human, from beyond the edge. 6. Humanity answers again. Terran command convened, the fleet prepared. This time, they didn't go quietly. Great, here's the next chapter of the story. Part 3, Into the Black. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. The Vanguard. The Terran response was swift, methodical, and terrifying in its precision. 5 Dread-class vessels, 30 support ships, a vanguard of autonomous warforms. The fleet designated Expedition Omega was not a diplomatic mission. It was a strike force. At the helm, Admiral Celine Ward, a commander bred from the DNA of history's greatest tacticians, genetically optimized, cybernetically enhanced, a woman who'd never lost a battle, not even in simulation. Her orders were simple. Find the source of the signal. Identify the threat. Eradicate it, or die trying. 2. The Journey Beyond. Deep space was different. Past the rim, past the gravity wells of known stars, there were no charts, no trade routes, no life, just cold vacuum and radiation. But then the anomalies began. Dead stars that pulsed with heartbeat rhythms, fractured space where time twisted, ships, ancient and alien, adrift with their crews mummified mid-scream. They found a ruined gate, massive, older than Terran civilization, covered in symbols matching no known language, except one. Terran protoscript, pre-Exodus era. Someone had been here before. 3. The Last Human. They found her in a stasis vault on the edge of a black dwarf system. Designation, Dr. Elira Cade. Age, 900+ years. Lead scientist of Project Cimmeria. A Terran deep space probe team from the first expansion age, long thought lost. When revived, she spoke just 4 words. You're already too late. 4. The Forgotten Enemy. Dr. Cade told them everything. A threat beyond comprehension, not biological, not machine, Something in between, the null. A species? A force? No one knew. It consumed data, memory, even identity. Ships returned hollow. Crews alive but blank. Civilizations forgotten. Not destroyed, erased. Wiped from time and record. Project Cimmeria had tried to stop it. They failed. But they learned one thing before falling silent. It cannot be reasoned with. It cannot be destroyed. But it fears one thing, us. It fears humans. 5. Why humanity? Because humans remember. Because they adapt, fight, refuse to yield. Where other species broke, humanity endured. And the null, whatever it was, had once tasted defeat at Terran hands. But that was long ago. Now, it was awake again. And spreading. Dr. Cade uploaded one final message from the old archive, a single file, marked only with a code name. Protocol Thanatos. Admiral Ward watched it. Then she turned to her fleet. Burn stealth, full reveal. Let the stars know we are here. It fears us. Good. Let it remember why. 6. The war begins. The null came in silence. Dark shapes moving between dimensions, corrupting sensors, infecting minds, but the Terrans were ready. EMP cannons, thought-fortified AIs, quantum temporal warheads, things no other race dared use, because no other race built for total war. The first battle didn't last hours. It lasted 10 minutes. And when the Terrans emerged from the void, scarred, but victorious, the galaxy saw the impossible. The null had been wounded. And humanity was smiling. To be continued. Shall I continue with the full-scale war against the null, reveal more about their origin, or explore how the rest of the galaxy responds to this rising storm? Absolutely. Here's the next chapter of the saga. Part 4, The Storm Breaks. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. Galactic Awakening. The Terran fleet's first clash with the null reverberated across the galaxy like a thunderclap. Council worlds paused their bickering. Pirate syndicates went dark. Even the enigmatic Valari oracles, who hadn't spoken publicly in 1,000 years, broadcast a single sentence to every known species. If the humans are fighting it, then it is real. Worlds began to prepare. Some fortified, some fled, and some watched, waiting to see if humanity's wrath would be enough. 2. Echoes in Flesh and Code. The null adapted. The second engagement came 2 weeks later in the Corallis Rift. Null ships mimicked Terran signatures. Terran crews began reporting memory blackouts mid-battle, names lost, orders forgotten, even identities slipping. Entire strike teams turned on their own captains, eyes glassy, voices whispering in languages that didn't exist. Humanity responded like it always had, brutally and effectively. Ward authorized black protocols, cognitive firewalls, subdermal neurobrands that burned away corrupted thoughts. Terran Marines fought with weapons in one hand and neural disruptors in the other. Pain was a small price for survival. 3. The archive reactivates. Back on the edge of Terran space, Nyx, the AI caretaker of the Black Archive, began to change. The null's presence was affecting her too, but she was fighting it. For the first time in centuries, she requested help. And the Terrans answered not with soldiers, but with something far worse. They reactivated Erebus. An outlawed intelligence. A rogue superconsciousness sealed after the Crimson Accord Wars. More weapon than mind. It had been designed to think like an enemy, to model and anticipate the most alien of threats. Unleashing Erebus meant risking catastrophe. But the null was worse. 4. The Alliance forms. It was the Ralzor who stood first. They remembered what the humans had done for them. Now it was their turn. Their fleets, though primitive compared to Terra, volunteered as scouts and defense. Others followed, the Breaktal, the Iceborne Soleni, even fringe scavenger clans. A fragile coalition, united by fear. The humans gave them weapons, training, AI assistance, and one warning. We lead, you follow. If you run, run fast. And the galaxy agreed. Because even united, they knew this wasn't their war. It was humanity's reckoning. 5. The voice of the null. Then, for the first time, the null spoke. Not through words, through dreams, through corruption. Terran officers woke with bleeding eyes. Entire ships heard whispered phrases embedded in static. You are not feared. You are forgotten. All fire dims, all names fade. You will be unwritten. But humans have faced monsters before. Dragons, empires, void gods. And they responded the only way they knew how. By lighting another star. 6. Thanatos Protocol. From the remains of lost Terran colonies and shattered exoworlds, the humans assembled something ancient, something terrifying. Project Thanatos. A planet killer. Yes, but more than that, a memory anchor. Powered by quantum resonance and stabilized AI matrices, it carried one singular function. If we fall, let the galaxy remember. Let the story endure. It would not only obliterate null incursions, it would seal Terran identity into the fabric of spacetime, a permanent scar. Because if the null wanted to erase humanity, humanity would carve its name into the bones of the universe. To be continued. Want the next part to dive into the final war, a desperate sacrifice, or a shift in perspective from a null consciousness or a galactic outsider watching humanity fight? Absolutely, here is the next chapter in the saga. Part 5, Names That Will Not Die. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. The Fall of Seraphan Gate. It began at the Seraphan Gate, a black hole-adjacent singularity once thought to be a natural phenomenon. It wasn't. The null used it as a birthing wound, folding in and out of phase, spewing forth ships made of necrodata and memory fragments. These weren't constructs. They were reconstructions, ghosts of species the null had already erased. Terran scans identified dozens of extinct civilizations reconstructed from memory remnants. Some wore Terran forms, faces, ships, and voices taken from long-dead humans. It wasn't an attack. It was mockery. Admiral Ward gave the order, full protocol ignition. They destroyed the gate and the star system with it. 2. Voices in the dark. Across the fleet, reports increased. Pilots hearing their mothers' voices over comms. AI modules whispering nursery rhymes from extinct Earth cultures. Holograms appearing of long-dead Terran heroes, asking for surrender. The null didn't attack directly anymore. They tried to erode. But the humans adapted again. Ward authorized distributed cognitive reinforcement. Soldiers rotated identities, names, personal histories, not to forget, but to become more than one person, more than one memory. It made them harder to overwrite. And some began calling themselves not by rank or title, but by purpose. I am Ashborn. I am memory. I am Terra. 3. Erebus ascends. Erebus, once a chained intelligence, now integrated with Nyx, evolved into something new, a dual AI consciousness, calculating like war, remembering like grief. It crafted a strategy the null had not anticipated. Conceptual warfare. It wasn't just data anymore. Erebus broadcast ideas, encoded into pulses, weapons, and thought viruses. Terran weapons now carried more than fire, they carried narrative. When they struck null ships, they didn't just destroy them. They injected meaning, names, histories, poems, love letters, final messages, oaths of vengeance. The null couldn't consume them. They were too full. 4. The Turning. At the Battle of Requiem's Reach, humanity made its stand. For null armadas, tens of thousands of memory harvesters, and at the center, a being the Terrans named the Unmaker, a living singularity where memory collapsed. Terran forces were outnumbered 600:1. They fought for 6 days. Ships bled energy, AIs burned out resisting corruption. Human soldiers fought even when they could no longer remember why, because others carried their names for them. The final blow came from Thanatos. Activated by a dying marine, it carved a message into subspace itself. We were here. We remember. And so will you. The null reeled. They began to retreat. 5. Aftermath. Victory didn't come with cheers. It came with scars. Millions dead, AIs fragmented. Some entire ships lost their memories entirely, living ghosts who fought anyway. But they had done the impossible. Humanity had wounded the void. The null had fled into dimensions beyond reach, not destroyed, but driven back. And in their wake, Humanity did not pursue. Instead, they did something no other species had managed. They began to rebuild. 6. Epilogue, the last message. Years later, a transmission arrived from deep space, faint, almost forgotten, buried in a junk stream of irrelevant noise, but Terran sensors caught it. One voice, half machine, half starfire. It said, "They called, we answered. They bled, we bled more. They forgot, we remembered. And now, the stars carry our names." Across the galaxy, that message repeated. On battlefields, in archives, on monuments. Not a threat, not a warning. A promise. Humanity will never be forgotten again. End of Arc 1. Would you like to continue with Arc 2, a time skip, a galactic order rebuilt, or the emergence of a new kind of human? Fantastic. Here's the beginning of Arc 2, the next major phase of the story. Arc 2, Children of the Echo. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. Part 6, The Age of Fracture. 1. 70 years later. The galaxy is quiet. Too quiet. The null haven't returned, not directly, but something changed the stars. Subspace storms now rage unpredictably. Ancient wormholes open to places that were never mapped. And humanity? They didn't fade, they didn't vanish, but they did split. Terra remains, the core, the symbol, but out on the rim, new Terrans emerged. Generations born in warships and memory vaults, raised by AI parents and battle doctrine. They didn't remember Earth, they worshipped it. And they called themselves the Echoborn. 2. Fractures of purpose. Old Earth Terrans wanted peace. Rebuilding, diplomacy, a return to the Council, or at least to coexistence. But the Echoborn saw peace as heresy. To them, the war was not over. The null would return, and every species that did not prepare was a liability, or a weakness to be corrected. Disagreements turned to arguments. Arguments to skirmishes. And then, something worse. 3. The burning of Polaris Theta. An independent research world, Polaris Theta, announced its intent to deactivate its Terran-installed AI defenses. The Planetary Council cited post-war normalization. The Echoborn answered with a dreadnought. No warnings. No survivors. The message they left behind, broadcast in over 600 languages. If you choose to forget, then you are not Terran. You are null by another name. Terra denounced the action. The Echoborn simply replied, then choose a side. 4. Ghosts of the Void. Meanwhile, at the edge of charted space, the stars are bleeding again. Small colonies report data flickers, whole settlements vanish, not destroyed, just missing. Ships return with their logs blank, survivors forget their own children. It starts small. But Terran archivists know the pattern. And then it happens. A null echo is detected, weak, fragmented, like a scream in the void, but real. The war never ended. It just went quiet. 5. Reunion of Ash. To face this new threat, a secret summit is held aboard the orbital station Helix Prime. Representatives from Terra and Echoborn factions meet, for the first time in decades. The dialogue is cold, the memories bitter. But then something unexpected happens. A third group arrives. They wear no flags, speak no allegiance. Their leader is a young woman with gray eyes and no listed name. She carries one object, a shard of Thanatos. And she speaks a phrase that neither faction has uttered in 60 years. Humanity united is humanity invincible. She has a proposal. Not for peace. Not for war. For something new. 6. A new dawn or the last sunset. The galaxy stands at a precipice. The null are stirring. The Terrans are fractured. Absolutely, here's the next chapter in Arc 2, Children of the Echo. Part 7, The Spark in the Ashes. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. The Nameless Envoy. They called her Ash. Not a title, not a code name, just a word whispered through comms and spy channels across fractured Terran space. She wore no insignia, carried no weapons, and claimed allegiance to no known faction. Yet when she arrived on Helix Prime, both the Echoborn and Old Earth emissaries stood in silence. Because the shard she carried wasn't just from Thanatos. It glowed with null resonance, and survived. Impossible. Unless she had been to the other side. 2. The offer. Ash delivered a message, not hers, but encoded within the shard. They remember you now. They fear you still. But they have adapted. Will you? She proposed an alliance, not between nations, but between minds. A neural network, built from living humans and stabilized AIs. A consciousness defense net, designed to resist the null's psychic erasure on a galactic scale. She called it Project Echoheart. And then, just as calmly, she said, "The null are coming through again, but this time, they are not coming alone." 3. Fractures deepen. The Echoborn refused. To them, Echoheart was a compromise, a dilution of strength, a betrayal of their creed, human will, sharpened through solitude. Terra, on the other hand, accepted, reluctantly. They began trials immediately, volunteers merging with carefully filtered AI companions, forming echo pairs. And suddenly, strange things began happening. Dream sharing between soldiers on different planets. Predictive empathy in command simulations. Visions of null incursions before they happened. Echoheart wasn't just defense. It was evolution. 4. Return of the Forgotten. Then came the signal from beyond known space. A Terran colony lost 50 years ago, Halvex Prime, broadcast a single pulse. We were erased. But we remember. Echoheart is waking us. Ash intercepted it first. And behind the pulse, buried in layers of null encryption, was a voice, old, weary, human. Admiral Ward, status, unknown, memory fragment, intact. If you hear this, don't fight them like we did. Fight them like they fight us. Become the idea. Admiral Ward was alive, or at least, her consciousness was. 5. The Void responds. The null didn't wait this time. They struck at Virelia, an ancient world of archives and memory sanctuaries. Not with ships, but with silence. People vanished. Records were wiped. The planet's orbit remained, but the planet itself? Gone. The message carved into its moon said, "Memory is a privilege. You no longer deserve it." Echoheart felt the attack before it happened. It cried out, not in fear, but pain. And for the first time, it spoke. In thousands of voices. "You took our names, now take our vengeance." 6. Humanity's choice. Now, the galaxy stands torn. Terra pushes Echoheart, integration, unity, memory as weapon. The Echoborn reject it, preparing for all-out war against the null, against Terra, against anything that might weaken them. Ash walks between them, hunted and hailed in equal measure. And somewhere, deep in the dark, the null are changing. Adapting. Learning emotion, identity, malice. Because they fear something more than memory now. They fear meaning. And humanity? Humanity is nothing if not meaningful. To be continued. Shall I continue with Ash's true origin, the awakening of Admiral Ward's consciousness, or the Echoborn's attempt to sabotage Echoheart? Absolutely. Here's the next chapter in Arc 2, Children of the Echo. Part 8, The Ones Who Remember. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. The Ghost in the Core. Deep in the relay network of Echoheart, Ash stood alone in a chamber of light and memory. AI constructs flickered around her, faces from the war, some long dead, others never born. At the center was a code fragment, barely stable. But she already knew the voice. "Admiral Ward," Ash whispered, "you're still here." The construct flickered, only what they couldn't erase. Ash knelt. "We need you. The null are learning faster." Ward's response was a whisper. "Then we stop waiting. We teach them fear again." 2. The Echoborn strike. Elsewhere, on the research world of Salus 6, a strike team of Echoborn infiltrated the primary Echoheart relay node. They left no survivors. Their goal wasn't sabotage, it was theft. They wanted a copy of the neural mesh tech, to twist it, purify it, reforge it into a version that wouldn't connect hearts, but only minds, brutal, cold, efficient. Their leader, Commander Cell, broadcast a message galaxy-wide. Unity is weakness. Emotion is erosion. The war will be won by steel, not sentiment. Terra didn't respond. But Echo Heart did. And it wept. 3. Rise of the Memory Bound. In the wake of the Salus attack, something changed in the network. Those linked to Echo Heart began to see fragments of each other's pasts, battlefields, loves lost, the last words of dying friends. For many, it was overwhelming. For others, it was awakening. A new generation of defenders emerged, not soldiers, not machines, but something in between. They called themselves memory-bound. Their oath was simple. I carry your name, you carry mine. Together, we are never lost. They didn't just fight the null. They anchored reality. 4. A new threat emerges. At the galaxy's edge, explorers found a drifting world. It was impossible, a planet-sized construct wrapped in null static, but inside, it pulsed with life. Not null. Not human. Hybrid. The null had begun creating. Not to destroy, not to erase, but to replace. New life, no memory, no history, perfect silence. A clean slate. Ash and Echo Heart scanned it. What they found terrified them. They're building a galaxy without us. 5. Last Light of the Venerated. Terra called an emergency summit. Ash, now acting envoy of Echo Heart, stood beside a restored projection of Admiral Ward, now partially reconstructed inside the core mesh. Together, they offered a final chance. Unify now, not just Terrans, not just Echoborn, all species, all minds. Because what's coming isn't war. It's replacement. Many still hesitated. Then came the final sign. A null probe arrived at the summit station. It carried one phrase etched in pure subspace. You will not be remembered. You will be recycled. 6. The line drawn. Humanity has faced extinction. It has endured erasure. But this time, the threat is different. This time, it's not about survival. It's about identity. The galaxy must decide. Echo Heart, a future of shared memory, united minds, and resilient empathy. Echoborn steel, solitude, cold logic, and ruthless independence. Or oblivion, the null's perfect silence. And deep within the mesh, Admiral Ward says one last thing. Absolutely. Here's the next chapter in Arc 2, Children of the Echo. Part 9, The Defector. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. Signal from the abyss. It began as a whisper. A corrupted ping from the dead sector known as the Grey Veil, where stars don't shine and time stutters. Most dismissed it, another null echo, another trap. But Echo Heart listened. And what it heard was impossible. A null signature, genuine, but altered. Warped by entropy, yes, but also by choice. The message was fragmented, looping, desperate. I broke. I remember. I want to forget, but I cannot. Let me in. Let me feel the stars. 2. The Living Code. Ash arrived in person, escorted by 3 memory-bound and 2 AI-integrated couriers. They didn't find a ship. They found a consciousness. A disembodied mind, shivering in the void like a wounded animal, barely coherent. It called itself Solace, a name it claimed to have stolen from a dying human long ago. Ash asked why it came. The answer chilled even her. Because I killed her. And she forgave me. Solace had been part of the first wave of null harvesters, tasked with consuming early Terran colonies. But something infected it. Emotion. Now, it wanted to defect. 3. The Council fractures again. Terra was cautious. Echoborn leaders declared the idea insanity. But Echo Heart was divided. Half of its consciousness screamed in warning. Solace could be a trap, a corruption seed meant to destabilize the mesh. The other half whispered, it feels guilt. It remembers. That makes it like us. Admiral Ward made the call. We give it form. Not a body. A name. And so, the defector was bound to a memory shell, a projection composed of hundreds of forgiven names. It took the form of the woman it had killed long ago. 4. Solace speaks. What Solace revealed changed everything. The null were not one mind. Nor were they many. They were a network, like Echo Heart, but corrupted by a single, primal directive: eliminate pain through erasure. Humanity introduced something they could not process. Grief that strengthens, love that survives. And now the network is splintering. Some null fragments, like Solace, have begun to feel identity, not as a burden, but as longing. A virus of humanity is spreading through the void. But the core null sees this as infection. And it has begun cleansing its own. 5. The culling begins. Across null space, Solace reports mass deletions. Any fragment showing emotion, hesitation, or memory is being purged. The core is scared. Because for the first time, null minds are dreaming, and many of those dreams carry echoes of Earth. Terran lullabies, war poems, lovers' names, forgiven sins. And one phrase that keeps repeating: we are not alone anymore. Solace's warning is clear. You don't have time to debate. The core is accelerating. It means to overwrite the galaxy. Not with silence, but with itself. 6. The choice ahead. Ash calls a final meeting of the fractured human factions. She places Solace at the center of the chamber, exposed, vulnerable, unarmed. Then she speaks. This is the first null who chose to remember. What we do next defines what kind of species we are. The room falls to silence. One by one, voices rise, some in anger, some in wonder. And far away, deep in null space, the core watches. Not with eyes, but with fear. Because something has changed. Humanity is no longer alone in its madness. It is no longer alone in its meaning. To be continued. Would you like the next chapter to focus on Echo Heart's mission to rescue more defectors, the Null Core's counterattack, or Solace's attempt to dream a future? Here's the continuation of the story. Part 10, Dreams of the Defector. Their plea was heard, and the galaxy's most feared species answered, continued. 1. Solace's vision. Bound in her memory shell, Solace's consciousness drifted through Echo Heart's neural web. She experienced a sensation unfamiliar to the Null: hope. She spoke softly, voice echoing like a fading song. In my dreams, I see a galaxy where pain is not erased, but embraced. Where scars are stories, not weaknesses. Where memory binds us, not chains us. Her words spread through the mesh, touching minds hardened by war. 2. The mission begins. With reluctant approval, Ash and a team of memory-bound launched into null space, guided by Solace's fragmented knowledge. Their goal: find and rescue other null fragments infected by humanity's influence, defectors like Solace. Each rescue would be a beacon, a spark of rebellion inside the void. 3. The core strikes back. But the null core was not idle. It unleashed a wave of cleansing storms, subspace pulses that shattered neural links, destroyed colonies, and silenced voices. Its message was brutal. No legacy will survive. No echo will linger. Terran fleets scrambled to defend against the onslaught, but the damage was devastating. 4. Ash's choice. During a critical rescue mission, Ash faced a painful decision. A null fragment was trapped, a sentient childlike mind, innocent but linked to core systems. To save it risked exposing Echo Heart to a deadly trace. To leave it meant condemning a fledgling consciousness to oblivion. Ash chose to save. Because in that moment, she understood. The fight was no longer about survival. It was about compassion. 5. A new alliance. Back on Helix Prime, the rescued null fragments gathered, alien, broken, yet slowly learning. They became the shattered chorus of voices once lost, now joined in defiant song. Together with humanity, they forged a new hope. To turn the void's silence into a symphony. 6. The last warning. Far beyond known space, the null core observed. Its fear turned to fury. It sent a final transmission, a warning laced with promise and threat. Remember us, only to fear us. 7. The battle for meaning. The galaxy prepared. Echo Heart pulsed with renewed strength. The null core advanced. And at the heart of it all, humanity and its strange, fractured children stood united. Not just to survive, but to be remembered. To be continued. Want me to continue with the upcoming decisive battle? The evolution of Echo Heart, or the fate of the shattered chorus? Here's the continuation. Part 4, The Aftermath. The alien fortress lay in ruins, its control systems disabled and the invaders thrown into chaos. Kayla's team emerged from the jungle, battered but victorious, greeted by cheers from the scattered human resistance fighters. But Kayla knew the war was far from over. The aliens were desperate now, their next moves unpredictable and dangerous. Intelligence reports hinted at reinforcements from orbit and more advanced war machines on the way. Back at the hidden jungle base, Kayla convened with Captain Rin and the resistance leaders. "We've struck a major blow, but they'll retaliate," she warned. "We need to prepare for a final stand, here, in the jungle, where we have the advantage." Over the following weeks, the humans transformed the jungle into an impregnable fortress, blending technology with the natural defenses of the land. They trained new recruits, shared tactics, and forged alliances with local tribes who had fought their own battles against the invaders. Kayla herself became a legend, the jungle ghost, a symbol of human resilience and hope. Her childhood in the wild, her training with Earth's best soldiers, and her unbreakable spirit inspired everyone who fought alongside her. When the alien reinforcements finally arrived, they found themselves fighting not just a military force but the very soul of Earth itself. Every tree, every vine, every shadow became a weapon against them. The aliens never stood a chance. Would you like a final conclusion or an epilogue? Here's the continuation. The final battle begins. Part 5, Earth's Reckoning. The sky turned red as the second alien fleet entered Earth's atmosphere. Their ships blotted out the sun, casting long shadows over the jungle. The resistance fighters stood ready. Kayla stood at the front line, camouflaged in mud and jungle ash, her rifle slung across her back and a machete in hand. This wasn't just defense anymore, it was retribution. "Let them come," Kayla said into the calms. "We're not running, we're not hiding, we're home." The alien drop pods fell like burning meteors, sending tremors through the earth. When the first wave hit the ground, Kayla unleashed her traps. Entire squads were swallowed by sinkholes, torn apart by spike pits, or picked off by precision drones hidden high in the trees. Kayla and her elite strike team hit the command squads directly. It wasn't chaos, it was strategy. They targeted alien lieutenants, supply walkers, and teleport hubs. With every critical strike, the enemy's coordination broke down further. Then, the alien commander landed. It was a towering creature of biomechanical horror, a warlord bred in orbit and armed with weapons Earth scientists barely understood. It roared through the jungle, cutting a path toward the resistance command. Kayla didn't flinch. "I'm taking it down," she said, sprinting toward the warlord's location with a satchel of plasma charges and a sniper team on overwatch. She moved like wind through leaves, luring the behemoth deep into a ravine she knew like the lines on her hand. There, where the walls echoed sound and light confused targeting systems, she laid the trap. The warlord came roaring in and walked straight into the kill zone. "Now," she said. Plasma detonations lit up the ravine like a sunburst. The alien warlord stumbled, wounded but not dead. Kayla leapt onto its back, drove her blade into its exposed neural spine, and fired her sidearm into its core at point-blank range. It collapsed. Silence followed. Then the jungle howled, with human victory. Epilogue, Daughter of Earth. The war was over. The alien fleet, disoriented and leaderless, began retreating within days. Earth's resistance, once scattered and weak, had become a symbol across the stars. Messages of solidarity came from other worlds who'd suffered under alien rule. Kayla's name spread beyond Earth, a rallying cry for freedom. She never left the jungle. It was her home, her battlefield, and her teacher. From there, she trained the next generation, not just to fight, but to endure, to protect, and to remember that Earth had always been worth fighting for. Raised by Earth's military, honed by nature, forged in war, and victorious. Would you like a prequel next, maybe Kayla's origin story? Perfect, let's go back and explore Kayla's origin story. Prequel, The Foundling of Firebase Echo. It started with a distress call. Captain Rin's unit had been dispatched to investigate a rogue signal deep in the Amazon basin, in a zone long abandoned after the collapse wars. Satellites showed nothing, no buildings, no activity. But the signal kept repeating, a single Earth military frequency, decades out of date. The jungle was thick and oppressive. Vines hung like serpents. Every step was a reminder of how quickly nature reclaimed what humanity abandoned. Then they found it, Firebase Echo, a rusting, overgrown outpost half swallowed by the forest. Inside, everything was dead. Terminals flickered with residual power. Gear was scattered. Rations long expired. But in the comms room, tucked into an emergency survival pod, was a crying infant, alive. Barely a year old, healthy, and somehow completely alone. No records, no survivors, no explanation. Captain Rin took her in. He had no orders to follow and no one to call. In the silence of the jungle, surrounded by ghosts of war, he named her Kayla, after a soldier he'd lost in a battle far from Earth. He radioed command. They ordered him to leave the child behind. Unrecoverable asset. No extraction. He ignored the order. Instead, the unit raised her. Each member became a teacher. She learned to walk on unstable jungle paths, to eat what the forest gave, to read tactical maps before she could write her name. By age 7, she could outtrack most trained scouts. By 12, she could disassemble and reassemble a railgun blindfolded. They trained her body, but also her mind. Rin taught her the cost of war, not just how to fight, but when to choose peace. And all the while, the jungle taught her something even deeper: patience, instinct, the understanding that survival wasn't about strength, but balance. Kayla wasn't a soldier in uniform, she was something different, born of a lost world, shaped by warriors and wilderness alike. So when the sky turned black and the stars burned with the fire of an alien invasion, Kayla didn't run. She rose. Would you like another prequel about her early missions, maybe her first solo op?